Hello listeners, my name is Cliff Ratza. I'm the author of two ongoing series of novels, the Lightning Brain series and a sequel, the Keeper series. And in addition to being an author and a writing coach, I teach at universities and have a consulting business. If you would like to learn more about me, my books, and my writing coach activities, please contact Prime Solutions using the lightningbrainseries.com website. Now, I try to make videos that I think authors and writers and most people might enjoy listening to. And this podcast is titled The Anatomy of Story, John Truby's Dissection. It's rather long because Truby's book is Byzantine, full of too much stuff, twists and turns, and lists that go on and on. But it's considered one of the best books for all authors and writers to read. That's why I am making this podcast. But I think only the most devoted author or writer listener will last to the very end. So please listen as long as you wish and then escape. And by the way, I had to fortify myself with some dark chocolate dipped in honey to help see me through. Let's see if it works. So, here we go. Deeper Dive, The Anatomy of Story by John Truby. There are such a bewildering number of books and videos and writing coaches giving advice about all the components of writing that any aspiring author or writer becomes overwhelmed. After wading through many, I can offer you these guidelines. There is nothing mysterious about writing a novel. Humans are natural-born storytellers. All you need to do is tap into what is already inside you. You don't need to get a Master of Fine Arts degree to teach you how to do this. Many people do this because they want a credential or seal of approval, or they need a formal program to guide them, or they want someone to teach them. My writing coach program offered through Prime Solutions to do most of this for you. And I have YouTube podcasts and articles and websites that implement it. Now, this article adds to my collection. John Truby's book is often mentioned. He, along with Robert McKee, are considered masters in the art of explaining the skills of writing. McKee's material is usually the why and what, whereas Truby's book is supposed to be the how-to. This article will try to distill his book, The Anatomy of Story, 22 Steps to Becoming a Master Storyteller. After listening to this, and if you read his book, you can decide how much of it you want to embrace. And always remember, you need talent, time, and a bit of luck to write a novel. And the talent for writing is something you are born with. Think of talent as the critical mass or level of natural-born ability your DNA gives you. It's like potential energy. Talent can't be taught, but you can learn how to develop the skill of writing, which is like converting your potential to kinetic. And now to The Anatomy of Story. This how-to book dispenses with an introduction and launches immediately into Chapter 1, Story Space, Story Time. The novel writing process contains two items in it, story space containing writer and speaker, and the reader/audience/listener. Pretty obvious. And then story time, which is what absorbs the reader/audience/listener. That's the time they spend being immersed in the story. Here's what Truby says a story is. It is a communication contained in this dramatic human code. A protagonist wants something, but obstacles block obtaining it. So he embarks on a journey to reach the goal and must change along the way as he fights through external and internal conflicts. That's all to it, folks. But writing your story is fraught with problems. You, the author, must decide if the plot, arc, and movement is linear, meandering, spiraling, or exploding. Then you must write or construct your story. using a process that covers premise, as your entire story condensed in a single sentence, 7 key story structure steps, character, theme, story world, symbol world, plot, scene weave, and then scene construction and symphonic dialogue. Whew, it's a lot. Well, there's a chapter in the book devoted to each. So now to chapter 2, premise. A premise is your story stated in one sentence. It's the combination of character and plot, consisting of an event that starts the action of a character on some quest, blocked by conflict and confrontation that leads to a goal. External or internal, or preferably one of each. Prior to the steps you take to actually develop your premise, you should do these 2 exercises. First, write a wish list of everything you would like to see on the screen or in a book or at the theater. These are your passionate interests. Then, write a premise list of all you have ever thought or can now think up. And now here are the steps you take to develop your premise. Step 1, write something that may change your life. Put the 2 lists side by side and match up core repeating elements. This starts you're finding something to write about that may change your life. Step 2, look for what's possible. Go through these lists and find options that look promising. Then pick one that leads to the possibilities for you to write about. Step 3, identify the story challenges and problems. They must grab readers and audiences and keep them tuned into the very end of the story. Step 4, find the designing principle. Identify an overall strategy for how you will tell your story. The designing strategy or principle is what organizes the story as a whole. It is the internal logic of the story that makes the parts hang together organically, so the story becomes greater than the sum of its parts. Here's a little formula. Designing principle equals story process plus original execution. Step 5, determine your best character in the idea. This will be the hero to focus on. And always tell a story about your best character. Best doesn't necessarily mean the nicest, but it's the one that is most interesting. Step 6, get a sense of the central conflict. Who or what is blocking the hero from getting what he or she wants? And how is it happening? Step 7, get a sense of the single cause and effect pathway. It's the chain of A leads to B, leads to C, and so on, all the way to Z, which is the end. This pathway is the spine of the story. You need one and only one. Step 8, determine your hero's possible character change. Character change is what the reader and audience want to see in order for them to be satisfied. Here's another formula. W times A equals change. Character weakness, that's psychological and moral, force multiplied by actions, events, plot points, so on and so forth. That product equals the change in our character, actually the change in our hero. Step 9, figure out the hero's possible moral choice. The story's central theme is often crystallized by a moral choice the hero must make, usually near the end of the story. To be a true choice, the hero must select from one of 2 positive outcomes, or on rare occasions, avoid one of 2 negatives. Step 10, gauge the audience appeal. Now that you've done all your premise work, ask yourself one final question. is this single storyline unique enough to interest a lot of people? You should always write first for yourself, what you are interested in and passionate about, but you should also consider what will sell. And if you can do both at the same time, your writing will come easier. We're just getting started. So now let's move on to chapter 3, the 7 key steps of story structure. Structure is all about how we develop the story over time. There are at least 7 steps, which this chapter will explain. The remaining 15 will be revealed in the remaining chapters. These 7 are the nucleus or DNA of the story. They are what every human being must go through to solve a problem in their lives. The first is weakness and need. Every hero has a weakness and needs something. So spell it out. The second, desire. Now find something or things your hero desires. They're on the surface and are what the readers and viewers see. Needs are deeper. Next, find an opponent. There should be an external as well as internal opponent that is competing against the hero for the same goal. Number 4, plan. This is the action that traces a storyline and plot. It's a set of guidelines, also known as strategies, the hero will use to overcome opponents and reach goals. Then, battle. Probably more than one. Battles are actions along the way occurring in the second and third acts of the story. The battles must escalate. Intensity and consequences and self-revelation all increase as you move towards the resolution and ending. 6, self-revelation. This is emotionally intense and painful experience for our hero. The crucible of battle forges them. And never have your hero come out and say or tell what the self-revelation is. Doing so comes across as teachy and preachy and turns the audience off. Let the audience figure all this out by implication. Finally, 7, new equilibrium. And the book ends in a new equilibrium in the world of the hero. The crucible of battle forges it. That does it for chapter 3. Now it's on to chapter 4, character. Truby says that most writers come at characters all wrong. They start by listing all the traits about a hero, tell a story about him or her, and then somehow make him or her change at the end. Truby has a better 5-step approach. Start by looking at your characters together as an interconnected web. Distinguish each character by comparing and contrasting with the others. Next, individualize each one based on theme and opposition. Next, concentrate on the hero, building our hero step by step so that we end up with a multi-layered, complex person the audience will care about. Then, we'll create the opponent or adversary in detail because this character is the most important one after the hero, and in many ways contributes to defining our hero. And finally, you, the author, employs the character techniques for building conflict over the course of the story. Maybe I need some more chocolate. And now to chapter 5, moral argument. A great story is not simply a sequence of events or surprises designed to entertain readers and audience. It is a sequence of actions with moral implication and effects that are designed to express a larger theme. And the theme goes beyond subject matter. It is the author or writer's view for how to act in the world. There are 2 basic ways of weaving the theme into the story. One extreme is to express it via a complex of dialogue and action that highlight the complexity and contradiction in the character's moral situation. This is what serious literature does. The other extreme is found in popular mainstream story forms, action, adventure, myth, fantasy, etc., in which moral vision is light. And in neither approach do you want your characters to sound like a mouthpiece for the writer. It is better for the characters to show, don't tell. And where do you find the moral argument? It is in your premise. So you got to go back to that and dig it out. I'm sorry, but Truby lists a bewildering number of ways to do all this. I doubt that any reader can concentrate long enough to absorb what he's saying. So stick to the point you just made for a good starting approach. Read the book later when you have the time and patience to read it all. I'll say more about that later. And now we come to Chapter 6, Story World. There are actually two. One that exists at the start and the one the hero wants to build. The writer creates the existing one by describing all the setting details and outlines the one the hero wants to build via the story's premise. The book contains too many details and examples to summarize what Truby says. So come back to the book later when you're ready to absorb it. But none of this is profound. It's basically common sense. But Truby gives us an information overload on all of it. Well, now to Chapter 7, Symbol Web. Symbols are nonverbal images that stand for something else and ping readers' emotions. Here are examples of some symbols. In Huckleberry Finn, the journey down the river symbolizes a journey towards growth. In Hawthorne's The Scarlet Letter, the symbol is the A Hester Prynne must wear because she gave birth out of wedlock. I'm certain you can think of many symbols that can be used for many aspects of the story. So can Truby. The chapter lists many. Well, let's go to Chapter 8, Plot. We finally have reached the chapter in which Truby articulates the 22 steps. But before he does that, he first tells us what a good plot is. It is more than a simple sequence of events telling us this happened and so on and so on and so on. A good plot is organic. It shows the actions that lead to the hero's character changing, or why it can't, to match the ending. And he also lists plot types: the journey, the reveals, the anti-plot, the genre plot, the multi-strand plot. And then he tells us to do these review steps. Look again at your design principle. Reacquaint yourself with the theme line. Review the symbol line too. Decide whether you wish to use a storyteller POV. Decide if you want to use one or more genres. And finally, he tells us to embark on these 22 steps in order to build a story structure. I'm going to run through them. Self-revelation, number 1. Ghost and story world. Weakness and need. Inciting event. Desire. Ally or allies. Opponent or adversary or mystery. Fake ally, fake opponent. First revelation and decision. Opponent plan and main counterattack. Drive, attack by ally. Apparent defeat. Second revelation and decision. Audience revelation. Third revelation and decision. Gate, gauntlet, visit to death. Battle, self-revelation, moral decision, and finally, new equilibrium. No one can possibly remember all these, so please listen again to this video if you want to record them. Better yet, you can go to my writing coach website and retrieve the article that this is based on. So let's move on. Chapter 9, Scene Weave. What we are supposed to do now is weave all the scenes together into a spellbinding tapestry that enshrouds our reader and audience alike. Like the 7 steps, character web, and revelation sequence, it is a way of seeing how the story fits together beneath the surface. And once again, the chapter is filled with number lists and examples that leave the reader flipping pages back and forth to find what Truby is referencing. Well, time to go to chapter 10. Scene construction and symphonic dialogue. Well, scenes are where the actions are, literally. So, using the description and dialogue, you translate all the elements of premise, structure, character, moral argument, story world, symbol, plot, and scene weave into the story that the reader or audience actually experience. A scene is defined as one action at one time and place. So what is it made of? And how does it work? Well, it is a mini story. Thus, a good scene contains 6 of the 7 structure steps, all except we have to exclude the self-revelation, which is reserved for the hero near the end of the story. And now the book marches through more examples and concludes with one last look at the techniques of scene construction and dialogue by studying 2 great films, Casablanca and The Godfather. Mercifully, we come to the last chapter. Chapter 11, The Never-Ending Story. A great story lives forever, affecting generation upon generation of readers and audiences. So, now the author repeats a mashup of items from his seemingly never-ending lists that we can include in an infinite tapestry story. And now I will quote Truby. The central problem I faced in this book was how to lay out a practical poetics, the craft of storytelling that exists in all story forms. My solution has been to show you the secret workings of the story world. I wanted you to discover the dramatic code. If you are wise, you will never stop studying and practicing them. But mastering them is not enough. Let me end with one final reveal. You are the never-ending story. You, like your hero, face your own 7 steps. And you must do it every time you write a new story. I have tried to supply you with the plan, the strategies, tactics, and techniques that will help you reach your goal. Becoming a master storyteller is a tall order. And if you are a good reader, you are not the same person you were when you began this book. Now that you've read it once, let me suggest, well, you know what to do. Well, what is that? I guess it's to buy the book and reread. And I have to admit, I'm not the same person when I began reading his book. I'm older and a little more frustrated than when I started. So I'm going to end this video very soon. But let me mention that I watched a YouTube video by a writing coach, and here's what she said. I was teaching my framework for scenes, which involves a 3-way breakdown of backstory, dialogue, and context. When someone asks me in the chat, how much are you thinking about when you're writing? My stomach dropped because I knew in that instant that I had screwed up. I screwed up by even implying, even offering the smallest suggestion that I think about frameworks while I'm writing a draft. No, you don't think about this framework when you're writing your draft. You just blast it out and then go back and edit it. And then when you're editing, review the pieces of your draft. Okay, so what I'm going to do is give you my optimistic ending to this video. Because Truby's book rambles through so many examples which can hide the author's step-by-step processes. And like every single expert on writing, his book invents definitions and terms that cover universal principles. At least its pieces, one by one, are comprehensive and understandable. But here's my optimistic ending to this podcast. You should pick and choose the best from Truby's book and combine it with the best you can pick from Robert McKee's books. And if you do that, you will have a successful framework. And there you have it. More than enough about the anatomy of story. Bye-bye until next time.